Hey friends, Allison Ramirez here, Christian author, editor, and content creator, here today with another editing related video. I feel like I am on an editing video streak because I have had so many projects recently, editing projects I should say. In the past, someone would reach out to me and I would just be immediately able to start working on their project, on their book. And now I've gotten so much interest that I'm actually booking out for the very first time, which is so amazing. Just to have that much interest from authors and to be able to have like a continual stream of books to read and walk authors through. This week, I want to focus more on when you're actually working with a book editor, how that process will typically go, and how you as the author can make it the most seamless and efficient and successful from your end. And then also what you should be looking for from your editor's end and how to have a mutually beneficial, good experience through the editing process. So that's what we're gonna go ahead and start with today. So step one when working with an editor is that you want to find a good fit to the genre that you're working on. If you're writing a theology type book, you ideally want an editor who has some sort of knowledge of theology. Maybe they have a degree in theology or they have a background in church ministry, for example. If you have a book that has very theological or biblical terminology that your editor is unfamiliar with, there could be a lot of things that they end up missing just because they don't specialize in that topic. If you're writing historical fiction, ideally it'd be helpful if your editor had some sort of sense of the period of time that your book is set in, for example, so they can catch if there's any errors in the type of language that's being used or the historical facts that are being mentioned, for example. You can't always find an absolutely perfect fit, but this is something that you want to keep in mind, is that if you can find an editor who is familiar with your genre, that will certainly help you out as you're moving along. Now for me, I edit both fiction and nonfiction books because I have a creative writing degree, so that helps me out with fiction. I work in a lot of genres. My specialties right now are probably historical fiction, contemporary romance, and a little bit of sci-fi. Those are the main genres I've been working in recently. I also have a degree in theology, so I work a lot on biblical-based books, prayer devotional type books, academic papers, because I also have that background. So that definitely opens more opportunities for me to comfortably take on more projects. So definitely get a sense of what your editor's background is. Do they have any degrees or job experience in certain fields that would lend well to what you're working on? Where are they in terms of their experience as an editor? That's also really important to ask. Are they brand new? Which I would probably define brand new as in their first 1 to 2 years as an editor. Maybe intermediary, 3 to 5 years. Once they've been an editor for more than 5 years, I would start to say that that's a pretty good amount of experience there. I would also say that when you're looking to hire an editor, they should be very willing to give you a sample edit. Basically what this is you send the editor a sample of your writing, maybe 1,000 words, 5,000 words. Usually it's 5 to 10 pages that they will edit for free, just like they would if you were paying them, and then they'll send that sample edit back to you and you'll get a sense of their style, what sort of mistakes and errors they picked up on. That's really, really helpful to you as an author because you already get a sense of what your completed edit from them is going to look like, because every editor is different. Some editors are very, very thorough, more than others. You might have an editor, especially if they're new and they're just starting out, they may catch a good amount of errors, but they might not catch everything. So that's something to keep in mind too. That's why a lot of times people will recommend multiple rounds of editing, just because even if you have such an experienced editor working with you, it is still possible to miss things, right? And so keeping in mind their experience level. Also, what is your budget for editing? Because I will say that editing can be expensive. That's one of the draws, I think, to my own editing company, is that I try to keep my rates very affordable when you look comparatively. For example, if you were working on a let's say 50,000 word book. That's pretty standard. It's kind of in the middle. Half the books probably have more words than that, half have less. But you could be spending close to $1,000 from some editors to have that book edited. For me, I would probably charge about $300 for a book of that length, which is very pretty affordable. A lot of editors will at least charge you $500, you know, like I said, if not more than $1,000. And again, it's a lot of it has to do with time, right? I mean, you can break it down to an hourly rate. If you're going to be spending, you know, 10 hours on this person's book and you're charging $20 an hour, that's pretty low already right there, you know, so, and how much money they're going to be making back. So, I mean, just keep that in mind and know realistically going in, you're not going to be able to have your 50,000 word book edited for $100. It's just not going to happen. Like, you have to be willing to be spending at least a couple $100 on editing, unless you're writing like a much smaller book. Like if you're just working on a short story or maybe a children's chapter book that is a lot more simplistic and a lot less words, you might be able to get away with less. Also looking at the book editor's website. Do they even have a website? Is their website very like professional looking? Is it, you know, very inclusive of their, like a little biography or background of the editor? Maybe they even have a portfolio where they have a sample edit on their website, or they have a list of books that they have edited, so you can go and check out those books and see what the editing looks like. Do they have endorsements or like little reviews from other people whose books they've edited that write them like a good review? These are all important things to keep in mind. Also, too, references. Like if one of your friends is referring you to an editor that they have worked with and it was a good experience, that's obviously going to usually be more trustworthy than just pulling someone out of thin air that you randomly came across online. These would be some of my big tips. I would also say when you're working with an editor, transparency is important, right? Timeliness, like if you email them a question and you don't hear back from them for a week, you know, unless they had a good reason, like they were traveling or they're sick, you know, just seeing like how prompt are they, what's their timeline, right? Because some editors could work very quickly and they can get a book back to you in a few days. Some of them will take weeks, if not months. So getting a sense of what your timeline is and if they can meet that timeline, that's something that's also really important too. And yeah, also I think it's really important as an editor to be very available. Like whenever I send my completed edits back to an author, I always tell them, if you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm here to support you and help you. Sometimes if an editor, they just send you back the work and they're very like hesitant to really like follow up any further with you, or they don't really want to answer any of your questions about the edits, that can also be maybe a bad sign that they won't really be the best fit, because I want to be very receptive and very open, especially when I do actually send the edit back. I don't necessarily see that as the end of the journey, like it is in the sense of the product has been given back to them. But I even tell the authors, I'm like, you can email me like weeks down the road if something comes up. And I also like to help them out when the authors have published the book I edit. I like to profile them, the author and their book, on my newsletter and just share, hey friends, like celebrate this editing client of mine, their debut book just released and this is where you can buy it. It's just a way, again, like especially as Christians, to really support one another and, you know, in the books that we're writing, because obviously not always, but a lot of times we are writing books that we're hoping will draw other people closer to Christ. So I think it's important when we're able to support one another in that. So that's like a fun little like perk, I guess, that I like to do is profile those authors on my newsletter when their books come out. Also, not all editors will do this, but writing up a contract can also be really important. Or even just like a little memo or a letter that kind of details like, this is what the editing that I'm going to be doing for you. And just like having the price, having the time, everything like written down and emailed to them. Because then if anything does come up in the future, you kind of have like a paper trail where you've like clearly outlined like, this is what I'm going to do. This is when I'm going to have the work returned to you. Just because if for some reason like there was miscommunication or the author says, oh, I thought you were going to be correcting all this grammar, and the editor's like, no, I was only doing like big picture edits. Like it's really helpful to like clearly have in writing like what the plan is and all of like the details. It just helps, you know, give like some sense of confidence to both the editor and to the author. So I'd recommend that too. Also factoring in various taxes is really important too, because if you are operating as a business, which I would highly recommend if you are actually a professional editor, you're charging people for your services, you are a business. So it's also important on the back end of that, right, to keep in mind, because come tax time, you'll be having to report your income and everything. So letting your authors know, you know, like if you are charging them $300 for their editing project, you might only be making $250 of that, or $275, right? If you have to know that you're gonna have to set aside a certain percentage for taxes. So that's something to like work in as well, and keep your authors aware of that. Be like, this is my base price, but this is what it's going to be with taxes. I think it's important to be upfront about that too. And it just helps you, you know, in the long run too, so that at the end of the year, you're not just like, oh my gosh, I owe $2,000 in taxes. And, you know, you can even be setting that money aside, right? That you get from each client, so that you have the money prepared when it's time to pay it. So I hope this video was helpful. It's kind of just was like things in the back of my mind, because I have been working with a lot of authors recently on a lot of projects. And I just thought, you know, if you are looking for an editor, you kind of already decided what kind of editing you want, and you're wanting to find a great fit, these are some things to keep in mind. Or if you're looking to become an editor, these are also some things that will help you hopefully find success as you start off. So I hope you enjoyed this video. As always, please comment what you liked about the video, or questions you have, or future video content you'd like to see in the future. So take care, God bless, happy writing.